Welcome to a beautiful Wednesday, and making it beautiful is gorgeous weather, and it was Money Wednesday. Talking about money for women, empowering emotional financial independence. Our guest today, Rosanna Lamana, partner CPA with Fuller Landau and one of Powerful Women Today's mentor expert. Welcome, Rosanna.
Thank you, Carolina. Welcome, everyone. Nice to see you again.
Thank you. We're going to speak about something pretty special today. And to tell you an anecdote, when I was doing coach training a few years ago, it was a pretty lengthy training. And on the very first day, on the very first hour, they would ask questions, if anybody had any questions. And the number one question everybody had is, how much can we charge? And, it was one of those, like ethereal questions, right? It's like, in the answer that the instructors gave was, how good are you? Right? It all depends. So we're going to speak about, why is the pricing services so hard, especially for women? In our conversations, they seem to struggle. Is this something that you've encountered in the past? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? We hear this all the time from entrepreneurs, especially when you're starting a new business. And it's kind of like, where do I start and how do I price my services? I find when we think of products, for example, it's a little bit easier to know what your true cost is, for example, right? Like, what you paid to either purchase that item that you're going to resell or to manufacture that item. You know what the actual cost is.
That's
And
right.
then you kind of know what your margin that you're looking to make on that to cover some of your additional costs. It's kind of like a little bit of an easier calculation, if you will. But when it comes to services, it's very intangible, right? And how do you determine the cost for that service? And it's not an easy answer. There's so many different factors to be considered. But usually kind of where I start is, running a business is running a business. If you sell products or services, in either case, you're going to have some costs that you're going to incur that you want to make sure you cover. So I always say, let's figure out what your break-even point is. So break-even point being, what price you need to charge to cover all your costs. And then you can start thinking about, any sort of markups there too. And so you're thinking about, yes, your experience level, are you new to this industry? Are you just starting out as a practitioner?
What is the market tolerating?
Exactly.
That is big.
Your competitors doing or charging, right? It's important to know the marketplace, right? Because then you get a better sense of what people might be willing to pay for your services. So knowing what the market will bear is huge.
So, what you were talking about, knowing your expenses. So when we're starting, you mentioned products. Mm-hmm. So with products, it's a little bit easier, right? Overall, is easier because if people buy a product from you, if they're buying a T-shirt from you, right? As long as they're happy with the T-shirt, your relationship and your exchange is important, but it's not as important as it is with services. Because with services, they're really buying you. Right. Yes, they're getting the benefit of your interaction, but the entire experience, the entire trust, the exchange of trust is really selling the invisible. We were talking a little bit about that. Mm-hmm. And for women, especially in professional services, it has been a little bit of my experience is that it is extreme. Either someone expects to realize 100% profit, meaning that they do not budget for, they don't understand that there's going to be expenses related. You must, it's unavoidable that you are going to incur expenses to realize that revenue. So that is one extreme of the spectrum. At the other extreme is where people are not charging enough. You know what I mean? It's like one expects everything to be profit. The other one, they're really not charging their worth. And that's an internal issue. What advice would you give when you're clearly reviewing a client's formula, right, for their go-to-market strategy, and they are not charging enough?
I always say place value on your time. Like, your time is money. Mm-hmm. And think about, how much time you're spending supporting someone with their problem or their need or whatever service you're offering. You need to understand that at the end of the day, you are providing a service to people. and you need to be compensated for your time, your effort that you put into supporting them. And I find that sometimes it's just a lack of confidence in our own abilities or feeling we're not good enough might hold us back from charging maybe the true market rates.
That's right.
Especially when you're starting out, you kind of feel like, well, I'm new to the marketplace, so why would someone want to work with you? You kind of start second guessing yourself. But at the end of the day, you need to kind of be confident in yourself and your abilities. And I think that's going to give people the incentive that they need to properly price themselves for the services that they're offering. So
That's
value
right.
yourself and your time.
Yeah. So value your time. I like that. So know your hourly rate. You know, that is, I remember when I used to work with executives that were so hands-on, right? And I would always say, you know, you got to know your $15 an hour tasks and your $450 an hour tasks, and focus only on those that you cannot delegate, right? So you yourself need to know what is your hourly it's not your hourly rate, because, you know, as an entrepreneur, you need to see beyond that, in my opinion. But what is the opportunity cost, right? Is, you know, for you to be doing this, there's a cost to it. And if you were doing something else, you're giving up something else to be doing these, right?
Exactly.
So that is something to consider, and definitely working with an outside expert like yourself, because sometimes you forget to take everything into consideration, right?
Yeah.
And what I find in pricing is that a lot of women, and this is our experience, this is our world. We're not picking on women. It's just, it happens we're powerful women today. So most of our conversations are with women about women businesses. And it's almost like you're afraid to ask too much.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And you're almost carrying both sides of the conversation. You're trying to know how much the client can afford. So
Right.
what is a good formula? Yeah, what's a good formula to overcome that?
You know what? I don't know that there's a magic formula to any of it. I think it really comes down to having the conversation. And I find that sometimes we lead with the money talks versus leading what the problem is and what the issue is. I find that if you can bring real life solutions to your clients where you help them either save time or help them resolve an issue they couldn't on their own, you know, the value is going to create itself there. And that very fact that your client sees value in what you bring to the table will better help with that pricing conversation. If you're leading with just, here's my hourly rate, do you sign up and I'll show you what I can do, I don't think you're going to have the same outcome in terms of value, because people want to get to know you, how they work with you, how you're going to help them. And then in some cases, that price tag really doesn't matter if you're going to help them solve like a really big issue that they couldn't on their own, for example, right? So people are willing to pay for that. So that customers or clients' perception of your value proposition is huge, and that will have a huge impact on how you price it. So I would say don't start the conversation with the hourly rate or what you're going to charge. Start with, what's the issue? How can I help you? And then let's talk about the dollars and cents.
So let's not, as the service provider, let's not have the conversation about you.
Right. It's not about me at all. It's about the client and what
That's
they
right.
need. Not what I need. It's not what I think you need. It's what do you really need? Like as a client, what does the client really need?
That's right. And, you know, that's a very important point. And also, I think is understanding the cost of the problem that you're solving. If you really want to know whether your rates make sense, and to give you an example, right? You know, think of like professional services are a little bit easier to price, you know, than say more of the personal services. So when you are perhaps doing relationship coaching or relationship counseling, right? Think of the cost of not doing the intervention, right? That it may end up in divorce. How much are divorces? Oh my goodness, they'll set you back 10 years. You know, like from a financial
Yeah.
personal finances and wealth creation. A divorce can set you back, decades.
Yeah.
So when you consider that, and you consider an investment that may help deter that, and you have some way to support the program or the intervention that you're bringing, that is a good guideline for you to explain to your client, what the program is about and why the fee is what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah, for sure. So it brings us back to an accounting, and it's Money Wednesday, where I'm a recovering accountant, and of course Rosanna is our guide when it comes to business insight. There's a concept called landed cost, right? And that can be some very important strategies for determining how much to charge. So could you walk us through just some basic guidelines to consider when you are trying to determine at least your base level markup or pricing?
Yeah, and I think when you talk about landed cost, you'll often find that terminology used more when it comes to products
Mhm.
versus services. So it's like the cost to bring. So for example, if you are selling, like, let's go back to your t-shirt example, right?
Mhm.
And so the cost to bring in the t-shirt, if you have it manufactured, say overseas, maybe
Mhm.
the cost is $5 to make that t-shirt. Then you have to think about your freight, your duty, your taxes, add that all in. Then you also have like your warehousing cost for that t-shirt and storing it before you sell it. You might have to have borrowed money to be able to bring that in. And so you want to make sure that, some of those interest expenses are also covered. There's a lot of costs that go into that to come up with the amount. If we were to flip, I know we want to focus a little bit more on services here, given sort of the audience and what we're talking about. From a service perspective, although you don't have that t-shirt coming in and those freights and duties and things like that, there is sort of that basic, I'm going to call it overhead costs of running your business. So are you paying rent for your space, that you have, your office, wherever it is? You might have some rent to pay for that, or you might have some utilities that you have, property taxes, insurance for running your business. Those are all costs of running your business that even if you don't have a single customer knocking at your door, they are fixed costs and you're going to have to pay for those. So to me, the equivalent of sort of the landed cost there is going to be sort of those fixed overhead costs that you need to make sure you cover. So I think you need to sort of think of that. And then in addition to that, if, as a service provider, we need to think about our time. I always say kind of also two things. One is, know how many hours you're planning to work in a year, right? So for example, if you're planning the 40 hours a week, times 52 weeks in a year, you're just over 2,000 hours that you have to sell, if you will, in a year. Well, of those 2,000 hours, you're not going to be working 100% of them, right? You might have vacation, you might have some sick days, some holidays, or other things planned. You're also going to have, as a business owner, running your business sometimes. So you're going to have those sort of non-billable hours. So you want to take those into account. So if you sort of take all of your hours minus those non-billable hours, you're kind of going to know what your billable hours are going to be for the year. And when you think about your billable hours that you have, and you know what your total expenses are, if you do quick math on that, you can kind of figure out what your hourly rate should be to break even, to cover those costs, right?
So how often would you recommend that somebody does a review, a quick review, right? So it's almost, in your first few years, or whatever, there's a change in market, or there's a change in technology, or you're improving your service. Anytime there's a change,
Mhm.
right?
Absolutely.
Often would you say that somebody should really take a look at their numbers? You got to know your, and I know this is the part of the business that a lot of us do delegation by abdication. It's like we hope that somebody else is taking a look at these, right? But you got to know your numbers. You got to know your client acquisition. You got to know what's your monthly overhead is, and how many of those hours need to be billable for you to not only turn a profit, but cover your overhead, right? How often would you recommend somebody reviews those numbers?
So I'm going to say at a minimum, I would look at them on an annual basis. And I think that's fairly realistic, because if we think of sort of our costs, for example, our rent expense, we kind of know what it's going to be for the next 12 months, right? It's not like it fluctuates mid-year sometimes, but very rarely. It's usually sort of a year-to-year thing. And sometimes people are fixed in for even 3, 4, 5 years. So you kind of know what they are. But rent could be one that, there might be an escalating clause every year and paying more. Your in terms of your property taxes, they tend to go up sort of once a year. Your utility rates can kind of go up randomly as well, but most expenses and insurance gets renewed usually on an annual basis. So that's why I kind of using that 1 year, like every year sort of thing to revisit, because that's when some of your costs start to increase potentially or change, is within sort of the 1 year piece. So you can kind of revisit where your numbers might shake out at that point.
And really understand, which costs are fixed and which costs are variable, and
That's right.
try to keep as many as much of your costs variable as possible. And again, this is why sitting down with someone, and I know you're one of my favorite accountants. For not only are you lovely, but what I like about you is that you also do a more holistic approach, and it's really, you take the time, and I wish more financial service professionals did take the time to train on it, and did take the time to really understand the decision making process of their clients, because that is going to affect, so by the time you sit down to do your taxes at the end of the year, it's too late. Like, you need to really sit down and put a strategy together in what you measure, you manage.
That's right.
Right. And this is the area of the business. You made mention of that when you're in business, you really have you're in there twice, right? You're in there as the facilitator and expert on your craft, but you're also there as a business owner. There's the business of being in business. And that's the part that you need to be really good at, right? In addition to, of course, being, that will determine your rates, how good your training is, how often do you refresh your knowledge, how good are you at advertising?
That's right.
If people don't know who you are and what you do, then, how will they find you, right? So I want to speak to you about, is there any programs or services or anything strategy wise that people can do in order to, to maximize their exposure, or to really get, understand your market. Like, I go back to, it's not who you know, it's who knows you.
Yeah.
Right? How do you find the right market for your product, for the right pricing, and for you to be able to be profitable?
Well, that's a loaded question, but I'm going to try and take it in baby steps. I don't know if I know all the answers to that. But I am going to say first is know what your competitors are doing, right? Like, is there anybody else offering your services? And if they are, how are they approaching it? How well are they known? What's the feedback on them? And then I'm going to say it's also good to, if you have existing clients, speak to your clients, ask them for feedback. Why did you choose me? Why do you enjoy working with me? Or what can I do better? Don't be afraid to be asking your clients for feedback, because, you want to make sure that you're relevant and useful in supporting them, right? Because sometimes we feel that as advisors, people come to us, or providing professional services in general, people come to us to solve a problem. And that's great, we can, but we need to make sure that we're not telling them what we think they need versus listening to them and understanding what they really need, and making sure that we're working with them to help them through the process, and that our time is there really to guide them, support them, and get them to where they need to be, or to maybe it's to provide that service that they need. I'm just going to use accounting because both of us are right. Like, from an accounting perspective, even the role of an accountant has been changing over the years, right? I remember when I started in practice 20 years ago, it used to be the debits and the credits, and we would, be worried about making sure we got those all right and making sure that those were done. Well, there's a lot of software programs out there that are dealing with the accounting and the debits and the credits. You can even scan invoices from your phone and it automatically uploads into your software. So as a service provider, you need to make sure that you're staying up with the times and being relevant and supporting what your clients needs. I don't think they need those debits and credits so much. There are still some that do, but there's going to be companies that don't need that anymore, and they're going to need more of, I need help interpreting my numbers. What does this mean?
Right.
How do I help? How am I going to use these numbers to price my services for the following year? Because I always like to kind of say, you should do it at the beginning of each year as opposed to the end, but you need the end results to kind of know where.
Well, you need both. You need to bookend it,
yeah,
right? You need to plan ahead as much as you need to review afterwards.
Exactly. So it's just kind of using that numbers to kind of figure out what it should be, and getting that feedback. Like, are there some things you're doing really well? And then the reason why I say is get the feedback from your clients is because then you could use that as an opportunity to better understand what your value proposition is, right? And to go out to the market and let people know who you stand for, what your brand is, what you bring to the table, and why people should work for you or work with you.
And this is where testimonials come in. And, having putting on my HR hat is, I'm always a little bit skeptical of like references and testimonials, because nobody puts a bad reference or a bad testimonial up, right? So they're going to be good. But on the other hand, especially if you are selling a service that is non-tangible, really asking for that testimonial and for that reference from a client goes a long way. And depending on the nature of the services, somebody may not want their name to be broadcasted, right? But you can still find a way to collect that feedback and provide it to a client. And some clients may not wish to have their testimonial broadcasted, but they may be happy to answer questions from another potential client, right? Or just on a more private basis. But don't be afraid to ask for those references to do that. And really, it boils down to sitting down and having that conversation with you, and or your whomever you work with. But at Powerful Women Today, like, I know I've learned a lot from understanding or having someone like you ask the questions, right? Even if I don't have the answer, it's like, I hadn't thought about that. Right? Or where's the expansion? Where's this going? And how do you price it? And with each level, each time you level up, there's a whole new set of questions. Even with us now going to the United States and Mexico, right? Now we're dealing with currency, right? Like, it's like, well, what does that mean? And what are the tax implications? And this needs to be an ongoing conversation that needs to take place with your financial advisor and your accountant and your advisory team, right?
Absolutely. I always be afraid to reach out to people and ask questions, right? Learn about what you need to know to maybe expand your business internationally.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know.
That's right.
That's basically, why. And I was just going to ask, we do have your email and your phone number on the screen. What is the initial process for somebody to begin a conversation with you?
So all I usually do is just ask you, reach out anytime, the meter is not running when I answer the phone. We want to get to know you, understand maybe how we can help. And then, obviously we'll take it from there. If there's a potential opportunity to work together, we'll talk about it. But really, it costs nothing to reach out and have a conversation. And sometimes you just need someone to bounce ideas off of. I find, especially with a lot of entrepreneurs, it's a little bit lonely at the top and you don't have others to talk to. And so sometimes reaching out to an advisor is just maybe helps you think through a certain maybe issue or process that you might have had on your mind with, and wanted to talk through that with somebody who maybe better understands the business or how we can help you. So it costs nothing. Just reach out and we'll take it from there and see where it goes.
Yeah, and Orlando is a full service advisory firm. What are some of the other services that that you're able to advise and cover through colleagues?
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm glad you asked, because sometimes people don't realize that we do more than just the accounting and tax, which is kind of what, most accounting firms are known for. We do obviously do the advisory piece, as you know. In addition to that, we also have our valuations team, which helps with putting together valuations for companies. We have a corporate finance and M&A, M&A being mergers and acquisitions. If anybody's looking to either buy or sell their businesses, we help connect buyers and sellers through that process. We also have a corporate recovery and insolvency group. So if there's any sort of financial difficulties, we help support companies through that. Often people think that we come in at the time that they're bankrupt, but it's not. We can actually help turn businesses around before it's too late. So that's definitely something that people should be considering. If you're having some hardships, know that there are sometimes other viable options to help keep your company afloat, especially in this day and age. We also have what we call a family office practice. So we work with a lot of high net worth individuals and supporting them with their wealth and how to manage it, and some tax planning, estate planning, family planning sort of thing. We also do we have a fuller digital. I know we had our session earlier in January on that, and we help companies through, talking through their digital transformation processes, cybersecurity, helping them seek out vendors, and so on and so forth. So we have a slew of different services that we provide to clients, sort of over and above your typical audit and accounting, which is great because it becomes a one-stop shop for a lot of companies where you've got a team of advisors supporting you and surrounding you, and working with even some of your other advisors. I always like to sort of team up with their bankers, our lenders, or their lawyers, and really working together and putting the client in the middle of the conversation and making sure that we're all thinking about their best interest and working with them.
That's right. And I do want to speak a little bit about the restructuring, because it's not always, like you said, like by the time you're thinking bankruptcy, it's, you missed an opportunity. You missed an opportunity to just restructure, sometimes just, again, have just asking those questions. Like, do you need a unit this size for your office, right? What can we change? What we can renegotiate? That is, if you want to find additional money, renegotiating your existing contracts and expenses is the number one place to start. And those are conversations that having a coach like you can help can help reduce the nervousness, because those are not easy conversations to have, no matter who you are.
That's right. No one wants to admit that their business isn't doing well or things aren't going well. Even just like when people have a bad day, it's great. It's really not. People's only talking about that stuff. So it's just important that you realize it happens all so often. Like, you're not alone. You're not the only one struggling. There's lots of people out there that are. And there's ways that we can help support people to turn things around before it is too late. And sometimes you lose everything, right? Because a lot of business owners invest everything, including their house, and putting them on the line, right? So it's pretty scary. So don't be afraid to ask for help. And it's you're not admitting defeat. You're not. It's about doing the right thing. And if you do it early enough, there's a chance.
And it's a little metaphorically that it is spring, things are beginning to awaken, and vaccination is starting to roll out, throughout North America, of course, which is our where Powerful Women Today facilitates. And if we've made it this far, hanging on to dear life with your business as we go through this economic recovery, now is a good time to have a conversation, because we still, although, there is light, right? There is now visible hope that these will find a way to manage both the human and economic reality of where we're at. You almost need to have this conversation to push you through, to see you through, right? Because surviving is half the challenge. It's really, how do you begin to thrive afterwards, and what can be done. So you have visited with us today. Thank you so much for joining us. I highly, strongly recommend, Rosanna Laman and Fuller Landau. I've worked with them. They are partners with Powerful Women Today. and they're trusted advisors, as simple as that. If not them, do find professional conversations and have more than one, right? Find a person that you feel a good connection and that understands your business and that is willing to understand you and understand how you process and solve problems. So thank you so much, Rosanna, for always bringing us such great business insight. And I thank all of our audience, and we will see you Friday with David. Thank you, everyone. Take care, and we will see you soon.
Thank you.